Welcome to the Proud Psychologist podcast, where we look at all things mental health. Brought to you by me, Carol, an LGBTQ coaching psychologist. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Proud Psychologist. I am Carol, and my pronouns are they, them. I am a coaching psychologist, and I'm here to talk today about feelings and emotions. So one of the recurring topics that comes up in my work with people is the worry, fear and anxiety they have over going crazy and having feelings or emotions that aren't normal or acceptable. This shows up in subtle or obvious ways, and some asking me outright, is this crazy? Am I crazy for feeling like this? Today we're going to look at questions like, what are feelings and emotions, and what can make them seem so scary and overwhelming, before turning our attention to what can be done to make it okay for us to have these emotions and feelings. It's a big topic, and this one podcast episode is highly unlikely to rewire your entire attitude towards feelings and emotions, but the hope I have is that you will take this with you as you go about your life, have conversations about the ideas, and work out if this is something you'd like for yourself. We start with a couple of massive questions. What are feelings and emotions? We grow up using these words interchangeably, but do they actually relate to the same thing? Now, if you dive into the academic world, philosophers and psychologists have debated this a lot, and they still don't totally agree. Some folks argue pretty strongly that they are different. They might say that feelings are a broader category. Think about it, though. You can feel cold, feel itchy, or feel hungry. And those are physical sensations, right? They aren't necessarily emotions in the way we usually think about them. So, in this view, an emotion is a type of feeling, but not all feelings are emotions. It is pretty much agreed that when we have emotions, there are changes happening in our bodies. Like, with anxiety, maybe you notice your heart rate going up, or that tight feeling in your chest, or maybe your palms get sweaty. These physical shifts are definitely part of the emotional package for many people. If you've ever encountered something like cognitive behavioural therapy, you know how much emphasis is placed on how our thoughts influence our feelings, which is absolutely true. But, and this is an important point, sometimes what we feel in our body actually comes first, before we can even put a clear thought to it. One of the most helpful ways I've heard the difference explained comes from some work by Prince back in 2005. The idea is that emotions can actually exist on an unconscious level, and if an emotion is unconscious, you can't consciously feel it. So, an unconscious emotion wouldn't be a feeling in that moment. It would only become a feeling when that emotion became conscious. This makes a lot of sense when you think about things like dissociation, where people might have emotional reactions happening, but they're cut off from consciously feeling them. So maybe feelings really refers to the conscious subjective experience that's part of an emotion. When researchers look at how we regulate emotions, how we work with them, they often use the understanding that emotions pop up when we're interacting with our environment in ways that are meaningful to us, especially when they relate to our goals, and that these emotions involve interconnected changes in how we experience things inside, subjectively, our behaviour, what's happening in our body, physiology, and how we express ourselves. This view is really captured in a book by Thompson and Mayer in 2015, and it shows that truly integrated view of emotions where it's not just the emotion, it's not just the feeling, and it's bigger than those two. Another person who saw emotional experience in a similar way is Irons in 2019. He broke it down into 7 different aspects: expression, physiology, attention, what we are driven to do, our thinking and imagery, the feeling itself, and our our motivation. What I really like about this multifaceted view is that it means we don't have to get stuck debating which part comes first: the thought, the feeling, the body bit. Instead, we can look at the whole emotional experience. We can ask, okay, what's happening across all these different areas, and then figure out how we want to respond to the whole picture. It's pretty fascinating too. Research in 2020 by Cohen and colleagues actually found that people listening to music reported 13 different emotional experiences. And these weren't just fear, sadness, and joy. They included things like amusement, awe, and calmness. And these were consistent across different cultures. I get excited about this because it really has the potential to broaden the way we think about and understand our emotional lives. It's so much richer than just a few basic categories. Now, in my own work, talking with people one-on-one, I honestly tend to use the words feelings and emotions interchangeably. It just feels more natural, like how we speak every day. When we're in a session, both I and the person I'm working with know what we mean when we talk about having a feeling or an emotion. The more academic distinctions are super helpful for my own understanding behind the scenes, but they aren't usually the focus of the conversation itself. When we talk about emotions and feelings, we're looking at that whole interconnected experience. Sometimes that means deliberately noticing how, say, a certain thought connects to a body sensation, or maybe we pay extra attention to the body sensation if the thoughts aren't clear right now. But the goal is always to work with the whole picture of what's happening inside of you. So hopefully that gives us a shared starting point, that emotional experiences are these rich, multi-layered things. And knowing that, we can now turn to that really important question. Why can some of these feelings be so overwhelming, so confusing, and sometimes just plain terrifying? Would I be much of a psychologist if I didn't point out that our previous experience of emotions can change how we feel about them? I don't think so. If you've completed a really difficult task or challenge, and the people around you responded to your feelings of pride, achievement, and accomplishment in positive ways, maybe celebrating with you, you're more likely to look at similar experiences in a more favourable light. If, however, your feelings of pride and accomplishment were met with disconnection, dismissive attitudes, and criticism, especially if this is a significant enough or repeated experience, you'll have learned that pride and accomplishment are dangerous within relationships. That risk in relationships of being criticised, dismissed, and losing the safe connection is scary. And if the relationship is particularly important to us, the past experience was intense, and/or we don't have a lot of support, it can feel especially threatening. This type of association between past experience of feelings and experiencing them as favourable or unfavourable, positive or negative, safe or unsafe, can be made and unmade at any point in life. The degree of intensity is also something that varies and can change over time. You might be thinking of a time where you were more or less motivated to share an experience with someone because of how they responded to a similar one in the past. Or even because of how others responded in the past. I know I've definitely held back from sharing feelings like anger, fear, and even joy because of past experiences with expressing them in relationships. The way to approach sharing our vulnerability when it's been risky before is through discernment. We need to take some informed and safe enough risks in order to build up a bank of experiences where our vulnerability has been met with attunement and safety. This can be tricky to do at times though, because our fear centre of the brain will be lighting up to encourage safety behaviours, but we'll be consciously deciding not to do the safe option. Engaging in some kind of cost-benefit analysis, where we recognise not sharing does cost us in big ways, will help. Does this person I want to share vulnerability with have other competing demands on them right now? For example, kids and work. Knowing them as I do, might they need to eat or meet some other important need in order to be present with me? We need to look at our own state too and discern whether we'd be better resourced and able to engage if we'd had some sleep, food, hydration, etc. You can't intuit and mind read everything. That would be unrealistic. What I'm saying is that you can use your knowledge that they've been at work all day, worked through their lunch, and are susceptible to hunger, for example, to time your sharing of something vulnerable when they are more likely to be able to be present with you and give you the positive response you're looking for. Sometimes it is the sheer intensity of what we're physically feeling that makes it scary. The pounding heart and tight chest or anxiety, the flash of heat and shaking that can characterize rage, the heaviness and inability to speak or move out of shame. All of these and more can be acutely scary, even more so if we try to banish or control them. Our emotions and feelings can't always be controlled. If we are trying our hardest not to feel something and it's not making a difference, the lack of control can really feed into our sense of being out of control, going crazy, and/or being scared by our experience. Grounding techniques can be a wonderful way of gently introducing more subtle experiences at times like this. They might not bring you out of the intense feelings completely, but by tapping into the grounding energy, your body will be reminded that the intensity isn't everything, and it isn't overwhelming everything else. I work a lot with identifying feelings because another reason they can be intimidating is that we don't actually know what they are. Naming the feelings gives us a framework for understanding what we're experiencing, which immediately resolves any fear of the unknown we may have been sitting with. Lots of adults can struggle with knowing they're feeling something, but not quite being able to identify what. And it's so normal because our feelings, our emotions, they don't come with language. We have to learn and apply the language to them in order to be able to identify them and answer questions like, how are you? How do you feel about this? And how might you feel if? One of the reasons I enjoy using mixed emotions cards and creativity in my work is because they allow the feeling to be depicted and language applied afterwards. Working like this enables people to learn how the language fits their experience and then how to communicate it. Struggling to communicate our emotional experience can really amplify feelings of going crazy and being isolated, and the struggle is real. What can be really helpful here, though, is to have someone else ready to listen and hear us. When they are able to understand and validate us, it's powerful and can act as the touchstone for us in the future, so we know that we can communicate difficult or messy feelings. This is something we're capable of. At times, we can feel scared about what we're feeling because it's not considered the norm. This is most frequent in my experience around the experience of grief. The social norms around what it means to be bereaved and what's acceptable or expected proof of our grief are pervasive. So pervasive, in fact, that some people look at me incredulously when I suggest that there's no set timetable or prescribed sequence of feelings and behaviours when we are bereaved and grieving. A change we can all make for each other is to allow space for people to have their own experiences without judgment about what would be a proper or correct way to experience it. When I'm with another person, it really doesn't matter how most of the world might respond to something if they had a different experience and response. They have their own history, thoughts, feelings, motivations, and goals, which automatically means they're going to have a different experience than someone else in their friendship group or town or demographic. And it's all okay. If you take only one thing from this episode, I truly hope it is this. Whatever you're feeling is okay. It may be unpleasant and difficult, but it is also okay. So, thank you for joining me for today's episode on emotions, feelings, and why they can be so scary. I hope to be back soon with another episode, and I look forward to seeing you there. If you can't wait, then there are other episodes you can listen to. Also, don't forget to check out my articles on my website. There'll be a link in the episode description. Take care.